Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a midweek Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. It is about 11:24 a.m. here, California time. Latest activity here on the Earthquake 3D globe. Let's pull that up and see what we got. Looks like a 2.6 over here across the Atlantic, and a 1.4 into the area of California. Now, I know yesterday, we've seen a pretty decent sized earthquake down here south of South Africa, right along the plate boundary of the African plate and the Antarctica plate. Let's pull that up right here. Pretty decent sized earthquake. Now I wanted to bring up the the reason why I'm going to bring it up is because someone mentioned that this may be some type of underwater volcano eruption and whatnot. And I went through all the data. I looked on many different systems. There's no satellite-based eruption. Even if it was underwater, we would see some type of breakthrough from the area below, like far as cloud features or maybe some type of changes in the buoy systems out here. And of course, there'd be a tsunami as well, right? And that never happened overnight. But I just wanted to go here and show how frequent these earthquakes are down here. It's a 6.7, right? That struck last night along the fracture zone. Went ahead and pulled up historical data. Look at that, just specifically in this area. In the last 24 years, 4.5 and above. We could go back, 50 more years and probably triple the amount of earthquakes out here. So 6.7, nothing new. In fact, this area does see a lot of sixes out here in this region. In fact, 6.8, a little bit further along the plate boundary back in 2023. Another 6.8, 2014. Further west, there is yesterday's 6.7. Back in 2019, another 6.7 here. So, it's very, very common to see earthquakes out here of this magnitude along the fracture zone. It's an oceanic fracture zone, divergent boundary activity, unless it looks, it does look like it's on the spreading seafloor center out here. You can see those ridges being formed throughout time. Nothing new. There is seamounts out here, or there's going to be probably quite a few seamounts wherever the oceanic crust is thin. But again, this is not going to be associated with any type of volcanic eruption. It would, we would definitely know about it, guaranteed. Any type of major underwater volcano like that would create potentially could create a tsunami, and we haven't seen anything overnight. I think it probably would have showed up by now, right? So I just wanted to go and cover how frequent earthquakes are out here along this fracture zone, and how, this is nothing more than a 6.7 earthquake out here. And let's see what happened. Has anything happened overnight in terms of increasing activity out here? Well, looks like a few hours later we did see a 4-pointer up into the Turkey area. I did say to watch this area of the Mediterranean for some potentially larger uptick, because the general plate movement here, the general strain out here in this area, shows the Africa plate here moving off to the northeast, where all the general strain is. So when you got the activity here between the Antarctica plate, this is the Australia plate over here, not marked, the Antarctica, and the Africa plate, when we get the divergent boundary activity, that adds further strain in the general direction of the arrows. And it does look like a little bit of movement kicked up slightly in this area. Nothing big. 4.3, that was a couple hours following that 6-pointer late last night. As far as any elevated movement out here, aside from that, looks like a typical day out there in the Turkey area, Mediterranean region. The Atlantic Ocean, not a whole lot showing up out here for now. Haven't really seen any aftershock activity, but aftershock activity following these type of earthquakes here along the oceanic rift zones, they don't happen all that often. Now, had this been on a transform type fault boundary or a subduction zone, then yes, we'd probably see some aftershock activity. But it doesn't happen all that often. We don't really see, 6.7 then followed up by a whole bunch more aftershocks. It has happened, but it's not. It seems like it happens less than it does as far as aftershock sequences go. in that type of plate boundary. A little bit of movement here against the Java Trench, stirring up. There's a couple, looks like some 4s out there, maybe even a 5-pointer in this area. The latest one, a 5.4 off the coast here of Sumatra. Fairly shallow earthquake coming in, but it looks like there was a 4.3 in this area as well, not showing up on the USGS map. New Zealand still rocking down here a little bit with some 3s up along the Kermadec Trench here. A little bit deeper activity into the Tonga region as well. That's pretty shallow earthquake up here, it looks like. 76 kilometers for 4.9. Remember, we got some 3s and whatnot stirring up down here, so it's not completely quiet. Just because it's shown that on the USGS map doesn't mean it's accurate. They only show a certain magnitude, and then that's why I have the EMSC data on the globe as well to show the smaller quakes. Fairly quiet out here around Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu area. Pretty, like I said, pretty quiet. Haven't really seen a whole lot of earthquake activity out here in the last few days in that region. Get a little bit of further movement up into the Coral Kamachaka. Seen some activity stirring up right about here. Not showing up on the USGS map. It's going to be a 4.4. And a handful of smaller quakes there off the coast of Japan. Let's see what we got here for California. Zoom in here to the area. There were a few earthquakes here last night into the southern end of the Cascadia subduction zone, where we've been seeing a handful of tremor out here. The latest one, a 1.6, 14 kilometers deep here into the extreme southern end of the Cascadia. It's down there. It's not a surface rupture, definitely somewhat into the subduction zone. Further out and about here throughout California, fairly quiet aside from the typical movement up here in the Clear Lake volcanic field around the geysers. The hydrothermal plant operations in full swing up there. Around the west side of the San Joaquin Valley, a couple smaller quakes near this area. Cantua Creek. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. If not, please feel free to pop on and make it right. 2.5, 2.4 from early this morning. Nothing big for now. And generally, Southern California actually looks fairly quiet in terms of any major movement out here. I mean, 2.5 map and above shows absolutely nothing here across the southern portion of the state. Still got a little bit of swarming stirring up here, specifically in this area of the Baja California region. That's also shown up here on the Earthquake 3D globe. So pretty good cluster here in the last couple days. Really haven't seen anything major, just a bunch of 3s and 2s stirring up out here. Not for sure which fault system that's on. It is off of the plate boundary a ways. Further into Yellowstone National Park up here, pretty quiet. Nothing showing up on the USGS map there for now. And the rest of the country, there are a couple smaller earthquakes from yesterday, including this new Madrid seismic zone earthquake, a 2.3 from yesterday. Nothing else showing up. Let's see here. Hawaii, another area we're watching, right? Seen a handful of earthquakes out here in the last 24 hours, mainly up across the upper East Rift Zone. Did you guys get a chance to see their social media posts here a couple days ago? They put out a interesting photo here of some sulfur deposits there around the fractures that took place there on the upper, along the southwest Rift Zone back in, this photo was taken back in July 3rd when we've seen that little eruption take place there. Not a big one. It was a 10-hour long small eruption across the southwest Rift Zone, but it did leave these beautiful sulfur crystals there from these vents. You can see where they're coming out of and left all these sulfur deposits out there. That's actually pretty cool looking. I would love to see that in actual person. But yeah, if you didn't get a chance to see it, it is out there. Some areas are showing some heavily deposited sulfur deposits, and then in general there's actually a decent amount of layering in terms of that sulfur. and then it just went away, right? But they did produce these giant cracks out in the ground about the time that the eruption took place there on the southwest rift zone, which came to a halt. And now, we're at a time period here where I don't know how much more inflation this area can handle. I'm a little uncertain on if we're going to see it back over here on the southwest rift zone or not. Most of the earthquake activity in general has been here across the upper east rift zone. In fact, a lot. If you go back the last 7 days here, you can follow a trail of activity almost leading off to the lower east rift zone out here. Today's activity, roughly about the same, a little bit less earthquake movement. Let's go check out the latest information here on the deformation chart real quick, which shows we're still going up and up and up. Looks like the key status right there. Steady as she goes right there. And like I said, we're getting close to something, whether it's a magma intrusion or magma displacement off of the area, or maybe even a fissure event taking place up here. It's hard to say. It's just continuing with no visible signs of what it wants to do right now as far as Kilauea Volcano goes. Excuse me. Earthquake activity, it has calmed down a little bit in the last 12 hours. There's a handful of smaller quakes, but nothing like what we had seen here in the past couple weeks, where we've seen elevated earthquake activity out here, but still continuing. Inflation's still there. We'll continue to watch that. Let's see what else we got here, folks. I think that's about it in terms of any major movement, clustering going on here across the Peru-Chile Trench. But generally more active than what we've seen here yesterday. Aside from that 6.7, yesterday looked fairly quiet. There wasn't a whole lot of earthquake activity out here. Looks like a 3.1 coming into the Australia area right now. All right, let's talk about sunspots here. We got a fairly decent sized sunspot that is currently facing the Earth, 3738, which is going to be right here. It is getting quite dynamic here in terms of complexity, growing over the last couple days indeed. So we'll watch this area pretty closely. It is in the position here of the Earth-directed view. Anything that does blast off will almost certainly be a bullseye shot to the Earth. Quite a bit of close complexity here with these magnetic colors, so we'll watch this sunspot closely for some stronger flaring. Over here, huge cluster of unorganized activity in these sunspots, but there's not a whole lot of flaring going on right now from that region. We are seeing a little bit of C-flare activity back from this active region way out here on the far eastern limb. We'll have to keep an eye on. Really can't tell exactly right now how big of a sunspot it is, but we do have this area that I mentioned, 3738 here. Notice these magnetic arches, getting a little bit of C flaring going on. It does look like it's about ready to produce a significant flare. So again, we'll keep an eye there on 3738, centered right here. And the other active region's way out here on the northeastern limb. I don't think it's this one. It's a little bit further back. We'll get a better perspective of here in the coming hours and days. There's our C-flare activity, creating a little bit of radio blackout centered over the North American region where the sun is centered at. Over. I wouldn't want the sun centered right here on Earth. That would not be good, but directly overhead. No major roars in the forecast. In fact, the solar storm forecast looks fairly quiet in terms of roars. Now, we do have a 99% chance for C-flare. M-flare 60. X-flare has been bumped up a little bit to the 15% status here due to the complexity and the continued growing stage of 3738, which harbors a beta gamma It almost looks like a beta gamma delta with this lengthy complexity in it. So it might be updated a little bit later on this evening as far as that status goes. All right, Storm Prediction Center out here. As far as severe weather goes, got an enhanced area across portions of the northeast. That's still some of that moisture there from Beryl, whatever remains of it. Got a 10% chance for tornado probability up there around Syracuse, New York. Goodness, that doesn't happen too often there with that type of possibility. So heads up if you're out there today, anywhere within the yellow, brown, and green range, could have some spitting water vapor out there. So keep an eye on the sky. Not a huge hail threat. Looks like mainly some wind, and the tornado potential exists out there today. So stay weather aware. If you're up there in the northeast, it's kind of a big deal. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have yourself a good day. We'll be back a little bit later on unless something major happens. Right now, just kind of watching things here on this end. Seeing what this beautiful planet that we live on wants to do. Take care. We'll catch you guys back out here a little bit later on this evening. Stay safe.